I have the role to really introduce our alumni, distinguished alumni, Anthony Marnell. I have a whole document here as my reference to introduce Tony. But I'm going to just leave that aside and really kind of reflect my personal connection with Tony, trying to actually then radiate out as how architecture has been connecting him back to school, connecting him to the world, and myself from really far away land back to LA, and then now in this space and with you all. When I first arrived in USC, the president at that time is Steve Sample. He actually, the first meeting I met him, he asked me, "Do you know any big names in architecture?" And I said, well, yes, I know a lot of names, but I don't specifically remember any big names from USC. So Steve Sample said, "Remember this name. His name is Anthony Marnell." Okay, I said, yes. So ever since then, Anthony Marnell is really the biggest name in my head. So quickly, I, without meeting all the faculties and staff and students, I went online and really checked who Tony Marnell is. So obviously, as you can imagine, this all over the place, and it's just so many things to be read. So to me, Tony's name started with this big globe of things that I couldn't even figure out what's in it, but the name. Then as I started to really research into Tony, and the first place that come to my mind is Las Vegas. So I thought, let me go to Las Vegas. I have other reasons to go there, but I like to check out who the last name Marnell is. So I went there. One thing I see, there are so many cranes that have Marnell's name all over the city. And that actually was the kind of 10-year period. The construction really picked up again. So Tony Marnell's name, or Marnell's last name, this name is all over in the city on the crane. So I thought, yes, Tony is this productive, creative, and gutsy builders all over Las Vegas. But then, as I then read deeper into it, every hotel I visited, every good experience that I have, and every memorable moment through the city, it's all made by Tony. And Bellagio and M, to name a few. Really, half of the hotels are really made by Tony's effort. Then I thought, and I have to meet this person. So one day I get to one of our faculty, Graham. Graham claimed to be Tony's professor many years ago. I think it was I said, Graham, I have to go with you because Tony is so big, and I like to kind of play a little bit triangle here because you have been his professor, so he may have a very soft feeling towards you. Therefore, take me easily, and then my size will be automatically amplified. So anyways, so there's a couple attempts, and finally I end up in Tony's office. A great office of energy, cross-disciplinary atmosphere, but most importantly, the office is actually at a very isolated kind of faraway place from the main activities. So I can see there's this kind of a very focused group of people that led by Tony actually designing almost everything you can imagine. I went to the office and really walked through the studio and see so many buildings, so many building types, and so many projects in different depths of the production. So this now, it's really kind of come to this essential impression of Tony, and that is a true architect. And a true architect is somebody who actually bring the design capability and other disciplines into an effort that creates spaces and places that make people feel good, make people feel at home, and make people feel that art and life is so enjoyable. That's what his word of hospitality. Hospitality is really at the core of that experience. But more than that, Tony, through many years of experience across all kinds of practice types, have also come to the senses of the social leader. wherever he has his practices, or for example, in Las Vegas, he has been the force to really push the society issues and really leading some civic project that is way beyond traditional architects' concern. For example, the Express West project, that is high-speed rail from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. Tony has put more than 10 years' effort really lobbying and putting social forces, finances, and technology behind it. For that, it really exemplifies how architectural education could do to somebody like Tony himself. I also felt that's the example of our education at USC, School of Architecture. So architecture in the end is the intelligence of society and really contribution to the advancement of that society. And Tony really is voicing that, and tonight we have the privilege to really hear his own voice in that regard. Once again, join me, welcome Tony, and thank you, Tony.
Seems like yesterday, but it was long ago. Jane, it was lovely, she was the queen of my night. There in the darkness with the radio playing low end, and the secrets that we shared, the mountains that we moved, caught like a wildfire out of control, till there was nothing left to burn and nothing left to prove. And I remember what she said to me, how she swore that it never would end. I remember how she held me oh so tight. Wish I didn't know now what I didn't know then. Against the wind, we were running against the wind. We were young and strong, we were running against the wind. And the years rolled slowly past, and I found myself alone, surrounded by strangers I thought were my friends. Found myself further and further from my home, and I guess I lost my way. There were oh so many roads. I was living to run and running to live, never worried about paying or even how much I owe. Moving 8 miles a minute for months at a time, breaking all of the rules that would bend. I began to find myself searching for shelter again and again.
something, so we're grabbing at the threads. And now the world's unraveling inside our very heads. Glasses smeared with lipstick, hungry eyes out in the street. Same old bodies moving to the same old beat. Had to draw the line, had to draw the line. All this talk can hypnotize you, and we can ill afford to give ourselves to sentiment when our time is oh so short. Names beneath the lichen on these cemetery stones. There are carnivals of silverfish waiting to dance upon our bones. Had to draw the line, help me draw the line, help me draw the line, help me draw the line. I've been down in yours, baby, I've been down in mine. I've been out of circulation where the sun don't shine. I've been down in fame and wealth, charity, even love itself. Draw the line. I ain't saying it's bad, baby, I ain't saying it's good, merely that he ain't so different 'neath his executioner's hood. In the name of liberty, in the name of brotherhood, had to draw the line, had to draw the line. Need to take some pride, baby, need to take some heart, need to take evasive action when the rumpus start. Here we are, buck naked, yeah, but where should we begin when it's not the flesh we're after, but the howling ghost within? Help me draw the line, help me draw the line, help me draw the line, need to draw the line, help me draw the line.
Now, that's a phenomenal achievement for a lifetime, and it's difficult to believe one person could achieve that in a lifetime. Actually, at a time when architects would make an entire career out of one of those buildings, you've done an amazing thing there. You've essentially created a new city where none existed before, in a desert, and you continue to guide its development. I especially like the music. I think the music was very, very cool music. I think Jerry Brown would take a cue from you, and they're trying to get a train from San Francisco down here. Maybe you could help them out and advise them. You know?
I'm not there yet.
Okay. I'm sure it's very inspiring to students here tonight, too, because you can see what's possible in your career if you have a vision, and you've shown us the sky's the limit. So thank you very much. Dean Ma, would you like to present?
Great. I'm totally humbled. I actually prepared a couple slides, really getting back to the topic of what not to build, which is really provocative to all of us. You can either take it what not to build or what not to build. So either way, so basically what our desire to build, embrace the whole beautiful spherical notion. So I have very, very quick slides. I'm going to just go through. And so to me, to build is to really bring three things together. The people and of purpose, people and place. And anything beyond this is really a question to be built. There are always people that are involved in the process. Depends on the scale. It involves more people. And then a piece to be built, it's not distinguished for its purpose, nor for its technology implication, but until it put into place. People, again, material and techniques, and build. People always there with their hands and making things huge as this as well. You can have all the technologies. This is actually the CNC bending, but you still need hands to touch it up. And then you need large equipments, armies of people, and working on project like this. And then this is actually a project of a bridge and a tower. The tower is an abandoned marine command tower, and then we wrap it around with that CNC bending net, and that's during the night. Even when you work on project, you still have involved in this scale of people, and even the vision can be audacious. This is it. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Qingyun Ma. You've shown us the examples of your design philosophy of integrating technology and sustainability, and the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. In seeing both of your presentations, it's obvious that you come from different approaches in architecture and different directions. The two positions, I guess, might be characterized as dealing with large-scale market forces and political and social realities in design, build, and development in your world, Tony, and Qingyun Ma, exploring the potential of new design technologies on the other. I guess this is a question to both of you, probably to start with Tony. Do you see these two things as incompatible in terms of what you've seen at the school here and the way architecture is moving today, the direction you see it moving?
I don't see architecture moving anywhere, from my view. I think architecture is very contrived, the way I see architecture right now in America. No more contrived than those funny buildings that you saw that I built in the last 40 years. We are trying to force something into a situation that doesn't, in my opinion, have a real definition at the foundation. Why do buildings 500 years ago all look the same? And why do buildings today all look different? It's pretty simple. We have a country and a culture and a globe that sees the world in many different ways. And we see individualism on the rise and collectivism falling apart. We don't have any great idea. We don't have any great country idea. We don't have any great global idea. What the idea is today is I'm for this, you're for that, and everything goes. And that's what you see being built in the last century, and there's no foundation, no guidance, no purpose by which we're inspired to. We're inspired to being different for the sake of being different, which is another way I always explain to my colleagues. It's like this. Yeah? This is the way it's usually done, but we all are trying extremely hard to make this natural. That's it's a deep subject, but an abbreviated view.
Qingyun Ma, what do you think?
I actually don't see what Tony has achieved different from what me as architect, not as a dean, at this stage of my career is trying to do, by now mostly in China. I think there's really a lot of similarities there. All architects are hoping to do is actually make sense of the three words that I have spelled. Make sense of the purpose, make sense of the people who involve in the purpose, and really make sense of the place. Therefore, as Tony's architecture unfold and develop without really a specific residence in a specific style, mine is the same. I think the style is really not an issue. It's really commanded by the purpose that's given either by the client, really representing a large realm of society, and the building itself. For example, that Marine Tower, it's a tower that's abandoned, but nobody dare to demolish it. But they all think it's ugly. What can I do? So almost there's only one way to do it, is to wrap around with something. So I see actually a lot of similarities. Whether the technology and actually the function bring them together, I think that's really time and the uses would attest to that.
Tony, you were saying, I mean, what then is you need a vision to be able to practice today as an architect. You need something to get you out of the bed in the morning, to be excited about, to think that you can make a difference somehow. Is that the way you feel in about architecture in your work?
Yeah, the problems that. Which is a long story that the projects that I was involved in are very complex problems, and the customer wants these products to market in a shorter time period, and you'll find that to do things today takes meetings and people, and we use technology as an excuse. I can go to a meeting and I can still write on a piece of paper faster the notes in the meeting, and then someone's playing with these boxes and things. And so the idea is to bring the product to market, and the architect is there to be an integral part of that solution. And then I never liked the idea of passing that solution off to someone else because I really didn't trust them. And then that person had another agenda. That person had, and rightfully so, the contractor has an agenda, just like the architect and the owner had an agenda. And so there's no reason why those problems couldn't be solved in I think you all call it collaboration. Today, that's a big word. Everybody's collaborating. But those problems were solved really quite easily. They were torn down into manageable pieces, and then there were priorities set about the problem. And if there was any money left, then you got to think about this idea of architecture. And that's how those buildings were built. So what does that mean? So there was an artificial discipline, a different discipline than all of us as architects want to have on ourselves. We all want to do what we want to do, how we see it. We want an unlimited budget, and we want lots of time to do it. And as we see it built, if it doesn't come out the way we thought it was going to come out, then we want the right to go in there and say, change that. And that is a building process. The solution that I chose was for a different group of clients, if you will. But that's an answer to your question.
It is.
Huh?
You actually were starting out during the time when design build was a bad word in architecture, when it was actually not allowed by the AIA, and there's been a whole land shift against, changing that. So
Yeah.
you've actually experienced that, the whole change in social view toward that, isn't it?
It was. One of the biggest things I wanted behind my name was AIA, architect AIA. And they would not allow that because I was an architect and I was a contractor, and so therefore I didn't have the capacity to make moral decisions about what's right and wrong. And by the time I was 59, they made me an honorary member of the AIA, and to this day I still do not have those words on my card or on my drawings. And I have signed every single drawing that I produced, every sheet, for over 100 and maybe 20 million square feet. And so you can be an architect and you can be a contractor and you can make right, moral, honest decisions as a professional. And the truth is a powerful thing. Some of those buildings you look at and you go, I shouldn't have built that building that way. Maybe I shouldn't have built that building at all. And I can tell you that this idea of you all can do this, what you want, where you want to fit. But when you look at your career and you look at this idea of people and place, you can't get confused, in my opinion, or you never will do anything. You need to make some honest mistakes, and no one's made more of them than me.
We changed the channel here to China, Dean Ma. You compare what's going on in China in construction development and this helter-skelter move toward development. How would you characterize that in comparison to what you see in America and also in Tony's backyard?
It's the desire to build and the consequence of the desire. It runs differently, actually, in China versus here. Generally, and Las Vegas in that setting specifically. I could just, from my angle, see there's a lot of social ambition and social aspiration and political ambition behind the desire of build. In that kind of political space, architects actually by accident, not by the education, by accident, has given a lot more impact in the process. We kind of enjoyed that by that accident, but I also totally agree with Tony that actually there are very few architects actually are truly thinking what's their social role. Seems like they're all enjoying making funny stuff, but no, really, and actually very few thinking their role is in that process. So I think, again, is the kind of similarity there. You can throw into the environment, given the chances, good or bad, to build. But I think it's our role, or to actually claim that social responsibility. That is actually, it's up to us. And I do believe that Tony's portfolio really has, if not for the great experience and wonderful attention to details and really the ability to produce in such a magnitude, is that behind the scene is really a willingness to claim that responsibility. You were starting as how much, how you have built so much, and any one of the building could be a career-long pursuit with architect today. But I think it's besides the ability to produce is actually the desire to claim that responsibility. I do feel client and society can sense that once you really claim that responsibility, you're actually returned to more because you do take the responsibility. So I think, and that is where my reading of the work has been, and really at the core of my aspiration of Tony's portfolio and the office. And
no, I would just say that of the work, this is a representation of the work that the 38 years, 40 years. But we have the theme here. There's as much work as we have done over the years we have walked away from or said no to. Could have been a much bigger firm and produced twice as much product in the same amount of time. And there were some buildings that shouldn't have been built for a lot of reasons. And not all of them were for money. A classic example in Las Vegas was City Center. I'd worked all my life to do City Center. And when that project came about, we came very close to that, and in the end said, no, this building is not going to work. The program is too much. 20 million square feet on 60 acres. This is not going to be successful. And walked away from the project. And that was a hard thing to do for a guy who likes to build buildings in his own town. But and I'm not to say that we were right and we were ingenious, but you have to have the courage to walk away from some buildings for lots of reasons, huh? And that consciousness is going to be within every one of you, or that reason, or that ability for you to make those kinds of decisions in the end.
You have been dealing in your entire career with a kind of answering people's fantasies in a way. Las Vegas is about fantasy and spectacle, and in satisfying that subliminal need in a way, isn't it, to your work? Indeed, Ma, what's the thrust of development in China? Is it purely economic, or is there any underlying zeitgeist, social zeitgeist of it in that way that you could compare to what Tony's been doing?
You probably heard of criticism on Chinese contemporary architecture. There's a lot of fantasy, actually. There are a lot of buildings that really do not have reasons to be built that way. There are a lot of designs that doesn't really justify itself on the basis of good architecture. It happens in such a colossal scale. So yes, there are really fantasies and spectacles behind the process, and I do feel that's universal. It's not. I do felt if I can speculate, we're transforming into a human being species that are now much more refer to our experience in a kind of temporal way. And I as a matter of fact, being Chinese architect, we learned so much from Las Vegas. But don't criticize it.
I've seen all my
yes,
buildings.
Yes, exactly.
Every one of them. Poorly done. Yeah.
I have the courage to say that, and not as a bad thing, is because if you all remember, Jim, you probably could give us a whole lecture on it, is the Learning from Las Vegas book, the quintessential postmodern trumpet. I think that title, I'm just kind of off track a little, that title is not totally right. It should be Learning from Tony Marnell.
No.
Because Las Vegas is halfway.
No.
Your building really constitutes half of that. But it's very interesting to see how this kind of new humans and the new challenge of architecture finally come together. I'm very excited to speculate on that.
Tony, you're going to say something?
Well, I just think it's very interesting. Las Vegas doesn't build those buildings for Las Vegas. We build those buildings for all of the architectural critics in Southern California. You are our customers. We are not our own customers. And so the idea of contemporary architecture, very interesting. All those buildings are buildings that are very, very disciplined in their structure, extremely disciplined in disguise. The concrete structures are down to 1/8 of a pound per square foot in the reinforcing. They're all modular. All those buildings are all set to modules that work from the basement through the public areas and all the way up. You don't build buildings like that in 30 months. You don't build 20 million square feet in the middle of the desert. Everything comes from Los Angeles on a truck. So the point being is, when you go to arrange these spaces, I think, as Dean Ma's saying, in the end, you are going to have those choices to make. You're going to be able to make those choices. But my choices were always very simple. Once I understood the problem, there was not this idea of a designer. We don't have any designers in our firm and never have. We're looking for architects. All of you want to be designers. I know I've all met all of you after you've graduated in my office. The idea here was, when I left here in 1972, for what it was worth, I was not entitled, but I was most certainly empowered. I had a wonderful education here, a wonderful education at this university. And I believed that I had the tools to go practice my profession. And that is my best wish for all of you, that you leave here that way. Whether you go to be an architect and a builder, or a city planner, or where you go, where you take this education, you're going to have this consciousness of architecture and of society and of people and of place. And that's an important thing for our culture, for our country, for the way forward, huh?
Very good.
Can I extend that? So you're wishing the students, I wanted to kind of pause on that. In many occasions, you have stated that your context when you graduated in your hometown did not really give you a whole luxury to really work as an architect or designer, but what you learned here really enable you to build with confidence and ability so many great buildings. I like to kind of address that a little bit. What was it that actually we wanted to kind of continue on that legacy and really make the program and still educating the most capable builders and architects in that context?
I guess, to put it another way, if you had to redesign the curriculum here,
right?
What would you do?
When I went here, in the summertime, we were able to go to work in architects' offices. There were intern programs, and we had the ability to go see what architects do. What I would encourage you to do, and you're going to like me up until now, but I would tell you to go get a job in construction, because what you must realize is that what you do, what you're doing there as an architect, and I love what Dean Ma said. At a certain point, These two hands did all of this. Not some machine, not some tech computer, not some technology. And your job as an architect is to see if you can convey your idea the way you want your idea to someone who's probably not going to have any more than a high school education at best. Build those buildings for you. And the better and cleaner you understand who's going to help you do this, then the more successful you're going to be. Your buildings are going to be built for less money. Your buildings are going to be built with a better quality. You're going to see your vision realized more accurately once you understand the whole process. This is not like a surgeon who does the heart transplant and then walks out and tells the nurse to sew him up. It's the best I know how to say it.
Can we open the floor to questions? Mike?
No, I'm happy.
Anybody have any questions for our guest?
Yeah.
Sir? No. Yes.
You showed up here from a builder, a family of builders.
My father was a bricklayer, yes.
And so that's both, I think, a blessing and probably a burden in the sense that you knew what it took and maybe was in conflict with your architectural education. So, and I know that I was here as a puppy when you were a senior here, and you, I suppose the polite term would be you were a provocateur here, and you also raised a lot of hell here.
I did.
Tell us more.
Yeah. So, I'm interested in, you think your positive experience, I think a lot of us have positive experiences coming here, but do you think that what you brought, that kind of making sure that Sam and Jose and Julie know what they need to do every day on the job site, informed your architectural education? In other words, our job is to make other people successful, right? Our job is to make the mason and the carpenter and
Absolutely.
and the steel fabricator successful. And I've never heard it put so succinctly as you've done it, but that's our really only, we're in the information business, right? That's what we do.
Nothing more.
That's what we do. And so if you could wave a wand, knowing what you do about architectural education now or back in the late 60s, early 70s, what would the advice be to not only to the students here, but those of us who teach? What would you wish for us?
I'd wish for you to focus on the idea of architecture. And I think the idea of architecture, quite frankly, gets lost. And doing those buildings, I'm not one bit delusioned of what we all think is good architecture, what I think is good architecture. Focus in the sense of you should probably go to art history class for at least 3 years, because there's nothing that you're going to think of that anybody hasn't thought about before. If you want an original idea, look at the wheel. The wheels are an original idea. The inclined plane, now that's an original idea. This is not an original idea. So first of all, you're going to build buildings for a society that doesn't even know how to spell architecture. They don't even know how to spell. You can go to the next school, go to the School of Business over there. They couldn't even spell architecture. They don't know, they couldn't care about architecture. Isn't that something like you change the color of your tennis shoes every day? So you need to know where your peers have been in history. That would be a big help. The second thing is to understand the tool of the trade. Understand the tools of the trade, communication. Understand what you're trying to do, communication.
Do we have another question you had?
You talked a lot about the customer. I have a friend who's an architect, and he's been a very successful at design build, but he's also been a developer. And he always says to me, you know, Larry, why do you want a client? They're nothing but trouble. You know, so my question is, could you tell us a little bit more about that experience? Or do you also do development? If you do, why? Or if you don't, why not?
Okay, the short answer to that is yes, we do development. We do commercial development. If you see the Rio Hotel there, that was built and operated for 10 years. You know, when you're an architect, it's like if you're in a lawsuit and you go to a lawyer and you hope the best you can hope for is the lawyer knows something about the law. He's not going to know about the case. He doesn't know about medicine. He doesn't know about construction defaults. He doesn't know anything about that. Maybe they know about the law. Well, you're all the same as an architect. Hopefully you're going to know something about architecting. But you're probably not going to know anything about a hospital, how a hospital really works. So you don't really know how a hotel casino really works. So you don't know how an office building really works. So you want to know something. If you're going to be the boss, if you're going to be the master of something, then you ought to know about what that client's business is about. If you want to give him a good product, a real product, a product he's going to be successful about. So, but then at a certain point, you know, I can do this. I can build my own hotel. I know how these work. I can go build my own office buildings. I can go do that because, yes. But remember, people say about architects, they're the great visionaries. Well, I'm not sure about that. I think there's a lot of great visionaries out there. They just don't know how to architect.
We had a gentleman in the front row here who's had his hand up.
Tony, a couple of things. One
And then
is, as a graduate of the School of Business here,
He can spell.
I told you! Huh? He's a plant. He's making me look good here now. Okay.
I didn't know a lot about architecture when I graduated, but I've become a connoisseur of good design and good architects. And I think you hit on a couple of really key things. I've built a number of buildings here in Los Angeles, some of the high-profile buildings, so we've always used great architects. And from the business point of view, we always had the conclusion that good design is good business. And so we've always had the top designers, the top architects work on our projects. But I like your separation of architecture and design, because our feeling has always been it's good to have good architecture and design, but if you get a good designer, what they will tend to do is bankrupt you, because all they care about is the design. So our discipline is to sit there and maintain their enthusiasm and self-directed design vision, because all they want to do is say, I built that building, and look how great it is. And so it's really a hard process as a developer to build great design buildings with a design architect, because they really don't have any practicality. And in all cases, the architect who can do architecture is really the most valuable person in a project from our perspective. So I think you really hit on a very key thing here for the students is you really have to be a practical architect, and then maybe you can be a designer if you understand how you get something built and make it profitable, feasible.
Tony, do you have a response to that, or do you want to respond to it? Or?
Well, I agree. I agree. You know, I'll just say this: the better buildings that I think I was a part of in our firm were the buildings that came from the inside out. They weren't the buildings that came from this wonderful shape. I mean, you know, this wonderful space from the outside. There were really buildings that came from the inside, and then the expression at the end was the truth, and they seemed to be the better buildings. So, and remember, you know, if you want to build something, I know lots of people that I graduated that made a very good living on project proposals of buildings that never got built.
We have a question here in the
Oh, I'm
second row.
sorry. Oh, yes. No.
She'd have your hand up first, actually.
Thank you. I just have enjoyed this. It's been so wonderful to Anthony Marnell. I just wanted to say I had the privilege of writing about your buildings 30 years ago because I was the editor of a design magazine. And I've been so impressed tonight, well, knowing about your career and hearing you tonight emphasize the importance of understanding the people and the process that design does not lead it. But I just wanted to point out, because that is your belief and what you've done, how amazing it was, because no design magazine, and me as the editor of a design magazine, I went there because everybody knew you did great design. You did great design. So you did it. I just wanted to point out that on top of your reining in the horses and serving the function, serving your client, serving the place, serving the people that can't even read the word architecture maybe to come to enjoy your buildings, you did what we in the design world thought was fabulous design that you've never seen before in Las Vegas. And here you were redoing or doing it again what had never been seen in Las Vegas. Great design. So it's really wonderful.
That's more of a comment than a question, I think.
Oh, yes, it is.
We have a question in the back, a young lady.
I was wondering, you didn't necessarily start out with casinos. Like, what did you start out doing? Like, what was your first project?
What was your first project?
Your
Was
first
it
project.
casino?
That's a
First
great
project. When I graduated here, I went to work for an architect. Immediately went to work for an architect out of school, and I convinced the state to let me take the exam in 1 year instead of the normal 2-year apprenticeship to get my license. And as soon as I received my architectural license, then I left the firm that I was working for, and I went to work for a general contractor. And at that point, teamed with a gentleman who had a construction company, who also, in 1973, saw the future of design build. And the future of design build in the beginning was sold in a very simple way. And that way was that we could bring the product to market quicker than the traditional design, bid, all of that. And the other thing that we could do for them was there wasn't this love triangle that always starts out as a love triangle and always ends up in a divorce. And that is the owner, the architect, and the contractor. And in the end, the owner always pays. Make no mistake. The owner always pays. The owner always comes out as a loser, and he's the patriarch, or she. So we said, it's very simple. We will design the building, we'll guarantee the price, and and to this day, we still do the same way. We'll show you all the numbers. If the project goes over the agreed-to price, we'll pay for it. If it comes under the agreed-to price, it's your money, because that's what you hired us for in the first place. And we produced, I don't know, $25, $30 billion worth of work in 35 years that way. That was the career path.
Neil?
That's available to you, by the way, very much now. There are many construction people who are looking for architects now to further that process. That's available as a pathway to you now that wasn't very available 38 years ago.
Neil, you had a question?
Yes.
And I guess when listening to you, you were talking about how buildings should be designed from the inside out, and yet that book is all about the outside skin in many ways. You were talking about the importance of finance and economic kind of question. The only reference, I think, in that book is a part everywhere to price economics, and I think there's a price on the back cover. What do you think of that book when you as somebody who is
You know, when you grow up in Las Vegas, you really understand it's kind of an insider's club in the sense that, you know, we don't take that seriously. And, you know, we're not doing the Freedom Tower here in New York. We tear them down. They're buildings. They're buildings. They're absolute buildings. When I started in Las Vegas, the population is now 2 million people. We use less water now in Las Vegas with 2 million people than we did in when I started now per capita, by 40%. So you talk about sustainability and all these things, very important, yeah? And we're evolving with that. But if you wait to solve every problem that all of you can think about, then you do nothing. And you wake up in a place like Southern California without any water. You wake up in a place in California where you all have a wonderful car, but you can't go anywhere because all the roads are clogged, because you haven't thought about transportation. You freeze. You freeze. They're just buildings. They're just buildings. But if you take them seriously, you must think about someday someone will tear your pets down and build the next better, more sustainable building. Take yourselves too serious.
Following on to Neil's point, though, it's ironic. You started out talking about the lack of a grand idea anymore, the lack of the idea that when you graduated it was just changing from modernism into postmodernism into the diaspora you have today. And in many ways, learning from Las Vegas was touching on why that happened. I mean, it was the beginning of diversity. It was the beginning of this atomization of ideas, wasn't it? So
yeah, but what was really happening was size. The buildings, all of a sudden, they were all 200 to 400 room buildings that you were looking at. Caesar's Palace was 400 rooms, 600 rooms in 1972. Now it's 4,000. The scale of all those buildings began to change. So you just couldn't haphazardly go along and, you know, I'll take a flying wing over here and then I'll go down to this end of the building and there's great cathedral ceiling, all these design ideas. These buildings had to be built to function, and they had to be built so they could afford them. There had to be a return on these buildings. And if there was any money left over, then you snuck in who knows, all the different tricks you saw. Some colored glass, the this, the that. But the spaces worked. Huh? That's what happened. The spaces worked.
Do you have any other questions? Yes.
Given your experience with the rail line to Las Vegas, what do you see as the future of high-speed rail in the U.S.? Where do you see that going?
Nowhere. We're an interesting society. We think high-speed rail is something that's going to happen to us. We don't understand that high-speed rail is something that can happen for us. And we're very spoiled here. And, you know, we're not very open to new ideas unless they're individual. If you notice branding and you notice market and you notice how we are as a society now, very interesting things that become personable. And we were the same in 1972. You saw the first picture. It's kind of a abstract view of communism, if you will. We all want to be different, but we all want to dress the same. We all want to have the same, you know, the same phone, the same whatever. Well, people look at high-speed rail the same way right now. I'm not going to pay for it. We have a very short view of ourselves, a very selfish view of ourselves as a society. If somebody hadn't built Hoover Dam, we all wouldn't be here today. There would be, these lights wouldn't be on here today. There'd be no water here. And we might have killed a fish when they built the dam. We have to think that out. That's part of our social responsibility. But we have to think that out. We have to think that. And all of you are going to be responsible for that.
There's a question back here.
Yeah.
When you were in school, what do you think was the most beneficial thing to you at school? And what would you, I guess, pass down on to us? And just mainly when you were in school, what do you think you benefited from the most at school?
Again, I'm going to go back and say there were two very influential things that happened to me in this school. Number one was art history. You need to understand that I grew up in Las Vegas, in the middle of the desert. And it was not culturally enhanced in the neighborhood that I grew up in. So art history was fascinating to me. It always had been fascinating, but why did they build those buildings that way? Why did all them churches look, they look kind of look all the same. They all look the same. Not like today. Every corner, every church looked different to me today. The second thing was I met a man by the name of Alfred Caldwell here. And Alfred Caldwell changed my life forever. Forever. A professor here. Forever. Not, it's been 40 years, but for sure I don't look at a building and I do not look at a problem and do not think about the life tools, not the architectural tools, that professor gave me, a consciousness. He gave me a consciousness that lives with me alive today, every day. Find that professor. They're here. They're here. Find that professor. They're here.
Give applause on that.
Thank you.
I wanted to really continue the discussion. I just wanted to make two notes here. One is that the role of architects, what Tony has been continuously advocating, and what we do as business is architecture. Regardless of his sometimes very intense tone of against other ways of looking at design, but I think is the core of the value of what we do in the school. And he is really impressed by how we carry that legacy of the school, really to define how profession is being influenced by our education and how the education then learn from the profession. That is really still a very big part of our curriculum, our discussion, and our relationship to the field. For that, actually, Tony really commended and generously actually gave us a very generous gift of $1 million to continue that legacy in the form of design and build. That's something that what he is very early on in the career has put these two together. So we have, under the leadership of our faculties, we have put together this continuous studio and constantly explore how design and build can come together to form the true essence of architecture. And this is going to stay with us. As Tony said, all the students, watch out the design build M studio in your fourth year. Are there fourth-year students here? Mm-hmm. Great. You're really blessed by this gift and this studio. And we have many professors who are really also a leading role in the practice. This really brings faculty, students together, and with the same vision. And for 100 years, right? For the 100 years, the next 100 years, we're still going to address the same issue on design and build. And back to you, Jim.
I would just like I'd just like to say that never would want to leave you with the impression that the architecture that you see that I did, that I would not defend, or I'm not embarrassed by it. Those are building solutions that were put together that we did. And there's the definition of architecture for me, I think will always come back to the same thing that will come to you. It's not definable in this time period, in this generation. And the exploration that Dean Ma is advocating here in the university, I think is essential, because we do need to find that voice that connects with all of us. And I personally believe that that is the fun of architecture right now, is I don't think there is a voice right now that the majority of us would say, this is the voice of our generation or of our time period. And that's exciting to me. I wish I could come back here and
you're always welcome.
Searching for that.
You're always welcome.
Searching for that eternal answer. So
that's
Thank you
great.
both.
Thank you.
thank you.